Hi there, and welcome to MiWeek. Thanks so much for joining me. I'm Christy McDonald. We are at the Detroit Historical Museum on the second floor at the Innovation Gallery, and we have politics on the brain this week, coming off the first presidential debate and the shocker on the Detroit News editorial page. Coming up, we will talk about why the paper decided to endorse Libertarian Gary Johnson. The first time in the history of the Detroit News that the editorial board went with a candidate who was not a Republican. Then we'll have a full MiWeek table, and our guests will go over the fallout from the presidential debate this week. And we'll take a look at a new initiative to connect our community spaces. And Detroit is one of 4 cities in the country chosen for this program. We'll explain that, and it is all coming up for you. But first, we'll start with the Detroit News endorsement of Gary Johnson. And who better to explain than the editorial page editor of the Detroit News, Nolan Finley, and the deputy editor of the editorial page, Ingrid Jacques. It's good to see both of you. Welcome back to MiWeek, Ingrid.
Thank you.
All right, I want to go through this because I think it's very interesting. Not a lot of people get to know the thought process behind an endorsement, and very shocked that the Detroit News did not endorse Republican Donald Trump. Nolan, take us through kind of some of the steps and when you started thinking about Donald Trump was maybe not your candidate.
Well, yeah, and I guess it's fitting that we're at the Historic Museum because this is a rather historic moment for our newspaper. We've been aligned with conservative candidates, Republican candidates since 1873, 143 years. And you know, this year we took a look at the Republican candidate and decided that, and it wasn't an easy decision. We've been talking about it for months, but we decided that he just rubbed hard against our conservative values and our values as Americans, and that we just couldn't bring ourselves to put our influence behind Donald Trump. We feel like he's in many ways a reckless candidate, in every way a reckless candidate. He has the potential to be a very dangerous person if he were elected president, and his values, his principles don't align at all with ours.
And I know that you've been talking about this for quite a while, Ingrid, and you said back even before the conventions, the conversations started. What were some of those, I guess, what were some of the points that was being bandied about the room when the editorial board talks about this?
Well, we have been talking about it a lot, especially since the conventions, but even before, when it looked like Donald Trump had pretty much sealed up the nomination, we started definitely having conversations around the office. Nothing formal, though, until the last few weeks. We've really been sitting down as an editorial board and figuring out how we're going to approach this, because it is a big deal. In over 143 years, this will be the first non-Republican, and I think it's also worth noting, while we wouldn't put our support behind Trump, we also looked at Hillary Clinton, and we made the decision not to support her as well. We didn't want to make her our first Democratic endorsement when 2 of the other times the paper withheld an endorsement was during the Franklin Roosevelt administration, and we didn't endorse him twice, so we weren't going to make Hillary our first Democrat.
You know, why not just say, you know what, we're not going to endorse anybody? Why Gary Johnson then, Nolan?
Well, we've done that before, and that's probably where we would have gone this time. Three times.
Yeah.
The last time was in 2004 with Bush-Kerry. We found those 2 candidates unacceptable for an endorsement, and in hindsight, they make these, you know, these 2 candidates make them look, you know, like, gosh, give them to us. We probably would have done that, but we looked at Gary Johnson as a serious candidate because former governor, and William Weld on his ticket, former governor of Massachusetts. We felt they were competent and capable and could lead this nation, and we think if there's a viable choice out there, we ought to offer it.
Yeah, but you know, voters could say, oh, but you know what, it's a throwaway vote. You know, Gary Johnson, he can't win. How do you counter that?
Well, he can win if enough people vote for him, and I think we're locked into this notion we can only support Republican and Democrats, and even if he can't win, even if it's a long shot, I don't think you waste your vote if you vote your conscience. And I think if you're holding your nose and saying, I'm going to vote for the lesser of 2 evils, I'm going to vote against a candidate rather than for a candidate, I think that is a waste of your vote.
One of the lines that stuck out to me, Ingrid, was, but this is an endorsement of conscience. It's also an emphatic statement that anybody is better than Donald Trump. Who do you think that you are going to get the most heat from or blowback from for the paper making this kind of endorsement?
Oh, I'm sure there's going to be a lot of Donald Trump supporters out there, a lot of people in the Republican Party, a lot of hardcore Republicans who will see this as kind of us abandoning them. But we don't see it that way at all. And we hope that a lot of our readers take our endorsement into serious consideration and make kind of a proactive vote. As Nolan said, vote for somebody rather than just against somebody else, which is where I think the majority of Americans are. The majority of Clinton and Trump supporters are saying they'll vote for them because they don't like the other candidate. And I think that's a tough place to be in.
I want to talk about what an overall statement I think that newspaper endorsements make. I mean, we've talked before in the past, Nolan, that maybe endorsements don't mean so much anymore. Do you think an endorsement like this will make a significant statement?
I think when a newspaper surprises, when a newspaper does what's not expected of them, it has more impact than when they simply do, what they've done for 140 years. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of people probably looked at this and said, well, they'll hold their nose and endorse Trump because they always do. And, we feel like we have to adhere to our principles. We haven't changed. We haven't changed our values. Republican nominee doesn't adhere to the values that we've always associated with the party, and we're not going to be knee-jerk. And I think this will get some attention. People may look and say, particularly folks who are going to just pass on the presidential ballot, and we keep hearing from a lot of people saying, I'm not going to vote for president.
Sure.
People may look at this and say, I can pull a lever for somebody.
Ingrid?
I agree, and I think that's a better place to be, to actually be in favor of somebody. And we like Gary Johnson. He came in and talked to us, talked to our editorial board, and he assured us on some of the issues we were a little concerned about, such as his stance on foreign policy. Obviously, there was the Aleppo comment, but he gave us enough information that we really do feel that he would be a competent leader. Mm-hmm. And someone that's trustworthy.
Let me ask you this. What do you think that this endorsement, though, says on the larger scope of how important endorsements are from publications?
Well, I think they're still important. I'm biased. I'm in the business. But I know that even when we endorse in much smaller races, local, state legislative races, those often get shared around Facebook, Twitter, more than a lot of other things we write. So I think people do read them and take them seriously, and we hope they take our advice here.
And the thought process that you put into this, Nolan, and especially the amount of years that you've put in the paper, kind of qualify for me what this decision was like and now the after effect of it.
Well, we're keepers of a trust here, and you don't want to break faith with your readers, and you don't. But we thought in this case, we looked at Donald Trump, and we saw a guy who was just far too unpredictable, erratic, for us to endorse. We have endorsed Democrats in a lot of other races. The Terry Land-Gary Peters race, for example. We endorsed Gary Peters because Terry Land didn't give us a sort of candidate we could put our name behind. But in this case, we looked first at Donald Trump and disqualified him. Then we looked at Hillary Clinton and we decided character matters too. She certainly has the resume, the skills, the temperament to be president, but her challenges with honesty, ethics, and self-dealing politics scared us to death. And we couldn't put our name behind that and have to defend that for the next 4 years. And so we moved on down the line and found a candidate we could support. We're very comfortable with this.